Sunday tasted like nutmeg and biting tongues. We were at my house on Hosea L. Williams Drive, the table crowded with pimento cheese, collards, and a lemon chess pie cooling on a trivet shaped like Georgia. Sienna lifted her wine and said, lightly enough to cut, "Lorraine, your pastries are classic, but trends move on. Don't you ever feel obsolete?" Harold chuckled, a low sound he uses when he wants a woman to feel small. I smiled the way women my age smile when we are cataloging. Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people. Trends pay today. Classics pay rent for decades. Darius cleared his throat, eyes bouncing between his wife and his father. The clock over the stove ticked 7:42 p.m., each click a pin stuck in my patience. When they left, perfume clung to Harold's suit, not mine. I stood alone and washed 4 wine glasses until the water cooled and my hands steadied. At midnight, he mumbled about an early Dallas call, which was odd because we live in Atlanta. By 5:58 a.m., and I was in the driveway, dew lifting off the hood of his SUV. I slid into the driver's seat, glove box, maps, straws, a black travel tube labeled Ultraglide. The cap wore a rind of dried shine. I didn't gasp. I set it on my knee like a specimen and opened the center console. A hotel key card from the downtown Hilton, room 317, and a receipt folded to hide the line that mattered. 2 entrees, 1 Cabernet, $246.18, AUG 14. I snapped photos and emailed them to myself from my burner account titled Receipts Air Recipes. On my workbench in the bakery office, I keep an ugly little tube of clear industrial glue for chair repairs. I unscrewed the lube, bled the glue in, wiped the nozzle, rolled the tube between my palms until it looked born that way. Then I put everything back where I found it precisely. People call me sweet. They forget sweetness can crystallize into edges. At 6:51 a.m., I brewed chicory coffee and set a plate for Harold like always. Eggs over hard, toast dry, salt light. He kissed the air beside my cheek. "Big day. Investors," he said, pocketing his keys. I watched him leave with a smile that didn't belong to my mouth. I texted Mrs. Whitaker, "Could use your porch later. Window view." She replied with a thumbs up, and I charged my phone. Battery at 100%. Before the ovens heated, I opened my ledger to August 28th and circled it in red. The day the forged transfer would try to steal my name. My hand didn't shake. I baked. I made money. I made room for justice. If stories like this help you breathe, tap like and subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. I read every comment. But why was a hotel key card from room 317 hiding under my seat? By Tuesday, the air tasted like metal. Harold left his leather planner on the hall table, open. Brooks franchise transfer, AUG 28, 10 more a.m., Peachtree Notary. My font, my logo. Not his handwriting. "Your fundraiser menu reads fussy," he said over breakfast, not looking up. "Sienna says the donors want lighter bites." He pinched his waist. "Times change." "Then let time change your appetite," I said, sliding him a plate. He didn't laugh. At 11:13 a.m., a supplier texted, "Heard you're restructuring?" Harold asked about canceling September flour. I stared at the words until they blurred, then called Thomas Reed. "Follow my husband," I said. "Start today." By dusk, Thomas sent a photo. Harold and Sienna stepping out of a Buckhead steakhouse, her hand nested inside his arm, a lipstick stain on his to-go coffee lid the color of a stop sign. Under the image, AUG 14 receipt matches. Party of 2. I didn't cry. I itemized. N1, perfume, timeline lies. N2, receipt with amount and date. Unused condom in the trunk in a pharmacy bag stamped 8/12. Burner email. "You were incredible tonight, D." N3 would come. N4 would end it. That night, I laid out 2 folders on the kitchen table. Love and Ledger. In Love, our wedding program from 1979, a Polaroid in front of a borrowed oven, a promise he made when my hair was a storm cloud halo. "Lorraine, your name will always stay on the door." In Ledger, today's printouts, bank queries, the Peachtree Notary's address, and a post-it, $85,000. Stamp? Who benefits? Harold came home whistling a tune he couldn't finish. He pecked my temple, eyes skimming for his planner. Big week, babe. Investors want fresh leadership. Don't be offended if we modernize. Do investors usually share bedrooms with the COO? I asked, pouring tea. He blinked a fraction. Don't start, he said, soft and mean. You're tired. Take a day. I set my timer for 10 days and for the first time in 46 years told him, "Good night, Harold," without adding his last name. Why did the notary appointment use my branding on a deed that would erase me? I remember the smell of butter and burned sugar the night Harold first promised me the world. It was April 1987, and we were repainting the window of our first bakery, Brooks and Brown Pastries, on Auburn Avenue. I was 5 months pregnant, wearing his college sweatshirt, the one that read Morehouse 79. "Lorraine," he'd said, brushing paint off my cheek. "Your name will always be on that door." I believed him for 38 years. Now, in August 2025, I stood in that same kitchen, holding that same sweatshirt, wondering when exactly he'd stopped meaning it. The flour supplier called again. Harold requested a quote under Sienna Morales Enterprises. Should I confirm? My voice didn't shake. "Send it to me," I said. Then I hung up and stared at the email subject line. Franchise transfer. Urgent. I flipped through old ledgers, each page a witness. In 1993, he'd borrowed $10,000 from my sister Dolores and forgot to pay her back. In 2004, he tried to rename the bakery after a hotel merger. Every betrayal had paperwork. I just stopped connecting the dots. At 3:17 p.m., Thomas texted me, following them to Midtown Hilton again. Room 317 confirmed. My stomach tightened. I looked at the clock. 3:18. 48 minutes until check-in. That night, Harold came home humming, "Ain't Too Proud to Beg." I watched him hang his jacket. Same perfume, new guilt. "Remember that promise you made in 87? I asked. He smirked. "We've both changed, Lorraine. Don't make history a weapon." "At my age," I said, "history is evidence." What did I miss the first time he said, "It's just business"? Thursday morning I found the coffee cup. Red print, half moon-shaped, right where he'd left it on the sink. I took a photo beside a ruler. Proof needs scale. Then I pulled out the tube from the glove box again. The glue had hardened slightly around the cap, but I twisted it loose and smiled. Justice doesn't need noise, just precision. At noon, Thomas sent me the restaurant footage. Harold and Sienna laughing, her hand on his thigh. I noted timestamps, checked receipts, everything lined up. Aug 14, 7:48 p.m., 246.18, 2 entrees, Cabernet, tip 18%. I saved it all to my ledger folder. That night, while Harold showered, I replaced the tube once more, back in his travel bag this time. I zipped it next to his cologne and a folded notary form. "Investors' dinner," he said, towel around his waist. "Sienna's picking me up." "I bet she is," I murmured. He paused, eyebrows narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means trends die fast, Harold. Glue lasts forever." He laughed, uneasy. I didn't. When he left, I called Mrs. Whitaker. "Keep your porch light on Saturday. You'll want to film this." She cackled, already charged. I poured myself bourbon, raised the glass to the window, and toasted the August moon. To precision. Whose red lipstick print was on Harold's coffee lid? By Friday, the August heat came with warning sirens. The bakery's air conditioner rattled as I read the bank draft again. $85,000 wired from our joint account to Sienna Morales Enterprises, LLC. A note beneath, collateral, 151 Kirkwood Ave. My home. The same roof under which Harold still slept and called me darlin' when he needed laundry done. I printed the draft, stamped it copy, and slipped it into my ledger folder. N2 had become N3. At 2:34 p.m., Pastor Miller called about the annual church gala. "Lorraine, we'd love your lemon chess pies again. We're short one sponsor since the Brooks withdrew." I froze. "The Brooks?" I asked. "Harold said y'all wanted to scale back," he replied. I bit my tongue until it almost bled. That evening, I found Harold in the den, polishing his loafers. "You withdrew from the gala?" I asked. He didn't look up. Sienna said the optics weren't good. Too small town. We're moving upscale. I sat across from him, hands folded. You're betting my house on a rebrand? He sighed, feigning patience. Lorraine, this is business. You're emotional. Emotional pays the mortgage. He stood, kissed the top of my head, and said, You'll thank me when the expansion hits national. When he left, I whispered to the empty room, When the glue sets, I wonder who'll thank who. The next morning, the local paper ran an article, 3 Sisters Pastries, faces ownership transition. My bakery, my name. I cut the piece, glued it into the ledger, and wrote across it in red pen, AUG 23. Public perception shifts. Prepare counterproof. Mrs. Whitaker knocked at 8:17 a.m. Sugar, you got a plan yet? Almost, I said. Just need one more document. She grinned, gold tooth glinting. Don't forget to smile when justice bakes. Why did the draft deed list our home as collateral? On Monday, I tried to fix what was left. Harold, I said, we need to talk before the notary appointment. He smiled the way men do when they think forgiveness is a sure thing. Dinner then? Bring that smile, babe. I agreed. He never saw the recorder in my purse. At 6:45 p.m., we met at the Magnolia Room. I wore navy silk, calm armor. Sienna arrived 10 minutes later, uninvited, too composed. Hope you don't mind, she said, setting her phone face down. I thought we could all align. Align. The word tasted of deceit. I wanted to discuss the bakery's legacy clause, I said. It protects the brand if one of us retires. Sienna tilted her head. Or dies, she added softly. Harold's fork paused midair. Accidents happen, she said, smiling toward him. I sipped water, not flinching. I see. That night, she accidentally sent me a blank calendar invite titled Counseling Session. The message body read, Oops, wrong Lorraine. But the metadata showed the meeting linked to Peachtree Notary, AUG 28. Same time, same address. Thomas's message arrived minutes later. A still photo. Harold and Sienna at the Hilton balcony, her hand on his chest. Caption, audio next week. I forwarded it to my burner drive. N3 confirmed. I printed the image, slipped it into my love folder, and whispered, Love doesn't erase evidence. The next morning, Harold kissed my cheek and said, Don't wait up. Paperwork. I smiled. Sign carefully. When he left, I sent Mrs. Whitaker one line, Saturday. Porch ready? She replied, Camera charged, popcorn stocked. Who signed room 317, Mr. and Mrs. Brooks? Wednesday dawned heavy and orange. Darius's fire truck idled across the street, a rare visit. He stood tall in his uniform, clipboard in hand, expression formal. Routine safety inspection, Mom, he said, not meeting my eyes. Routine or requested? I asked. He hesitated. Dad mentioned you've been stressed. He thought a checkup might help. My own son, playing protocol for his father. The betrayal was quieter than Harold's, but cut deeper. I walked him through the bakery, every extinguisher tagged, every outlet labeled. Everything works, I said, except maybe your father's conscience. Mom, he began. Don't mom me, deputy. You think this is about stress? Ask who funded your new rescue vehicle. His eyes flicked up. What? 85,000, routed from our joint account. Look it up. He stiffened. I can't get involved in family finances. You already are. I turned away, let him leave. Watching the truck roll off, I felt the loneliness of a woman erased by signatures. That evening, I found Harold's packed garment bag by the door. Business trip, he muttered. Sienna's handling investor logistics. I'm sure she is. I traced a finger along the zipper. His shirt cuff peeked out, embroidered HB. Will Darius be covering your block Saturday? I asked. He paused. Why would you? Because I like my son where I can see him. When he left, I poured bourbon into my teacup and whispered, So that's your last safety inspection. Why did my son's station assignment change to my block? Friday night, I sat on Mrs. Whitaker's porch, the air buzzing with crickets and secrets. She passed me her phone, screen ready. Angles perfect. When the siren comes, we'll have proof and popcorn. Inside, the bakery ovens glowed like sleeping beasts. I checked my setup. Timer synced to 7:30 p.m., incense near the smoke alarm, camera pointed at the kitchen window. Not enough to cause harm, just panic. Enough to summon Station 14, enough to summon him. Thomas sent the final audio at 6:42 p.m. Harold's voice, pleading low. Just a few more days, Sienna. Once it's notarized, we'll sell the house and disappear. Push the papers through, she hissed. I forwarded it to my cloud drive, labeled N3, audio proof. I lit the incense, opened a window, and waited. 7:28 p.m., a curl of black smoke rose. 7:31, the alarm shrieked. Across the street, Mrs. Whitaker started filming. The first siren wailed 2 blocks over. Through the upstairs window, I saw motion. Harold's silhouette, half-dressed, Sienna's hair a flash of gold. They were together in my house. My heart didn't race. It steadied. The engine roared up. Darius jumped down first, barking orders. 2 firefighters forced the door, then froze. I saw it from across the street. Whitaker's phone steady. Confusion, then laughter, then shouts. Inside that room, glue had done its job. I stayed seated on the porch, coffee in hand, as neighbors gathered. "What's happening?" someone asked. "Just a routine inspection," I said softly. Would black smoke be enough to bring them running? Saturday morning, I woke to a city washed clean by a midnight storm. The neighborhood already knew what the firefighters had found. News travels faster than sirens when shame is involved. I brewed coffee, printed still frames from Mrs. Whitaker's video, and slid them into my ledger folder behind a new divider. N4, Master Proof. At 9:06 a.m., Thomas knocked, damp from the rain, and handed me a manila envelope. "Draft notarization pulled from Harold's email cache," he said. He saved the PDF to a synced folder, sloppy. I slipped on reading glasses. The document blinked like a betrayal in black and white. Transfer of ownership. 3 Sisters Pastries. My signature, traced from a 2011 lease, a notary's name I recognized from Peachtree, and a bank stamp, $85,000, cash. "Serial numbers?" I asked. Thomas grinned. "Highlighted." I photocopied the draft, then the serial numbers, then the notary barcode. I placed today's Atlanta ledger beside it and took a timed photo for chain of custody. Dates and amounts. My quiet soldiers. At 10:22, Darius called. "Mom, about last night." "I didn't ask the glue to love them," I said. He exhaled a startled laugh, then sobered. "I spoke to the captain. We logged it as a domestic medical assist. No arson, no report on you." "Good," I said. "Now listen, Aug 28, 10 a.m., Peachtree Notary. I need you free by noon." "Why?" "Because I'm going to cut a wire inside our family, and I'd like my son there to see the lights go out." Before he could answer, Harold's number lit my phone. I let it ring twice before answering. "Lorraine," he began, urgent. "There was an incident. Medical. Sienna is—" "Resting," I asked. "Separating. Don't be cruel. Cruel is a forged deed." Silence. Then, "You don't understand the investor's pressure." "I understand serial numbers." He hung up. At noon, I visited Peachtree Notary. I brought peach scones and a smile. "For the desk," I said. The clerk warmed to me, as hoped. "We've got a busy Thursday," she said, flipping her book. I leaned in. "Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below." We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone. Aug 28, 10 more a.m., Brooks franchise transfer. Her pen tapped the line. "Are you—" "I bake for them," I said, and left a business card. Back home, I layered the evidence on my dining table, N1 to N4, all aligned. I lit a candle, poured wine, and whispered, "Let them come." Why did the bank stamp read $85,000? Cash? The next few days passed like a waltz in slow motion. Harold texted twice, both times sterile. "Need to retrieve some files." I replied, "Bring gloves." He didn't answer. Mrs. Whitaker brought over pound cake and gossip. "Half the block's replaying my video," she said, eyes bright. "I told them you were calm as communion." "Let them talk," I said. Noise distracts from precision. At 8 p.m., I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the original incorporation papers from 1979. My name, In blue ink, top line. His name, second. Clause 14. All ownership changes require written consent of both parties, notarized and witnessed. His signature forged meant his own undoing. I printed 3 copies of everything, one for Darius, one for Thomas, one for myself, and sealed each in brown envelopes marked, "To be opened if I fall silent." The morning of August 27th arrived hot and clear. I dressed in cream linen, soft armor. My phone buzzed. A new email from Sienna M. Subject, apologies. The body read, "Let's start fresh after Thursday. I'll make it up to you." I forwarded it to Thomas. He replied, "Metadata matches burner account. Proof of guilt in pixels." That night, I called the notary office pretending to confirm Harold's appointment. "Mrs. Brooks?" the clerk asked, puzzled. "We already have your signature scanned in." "Do you now?" I said. "Keep it warm. I'll be bringing my pen." When I hung up, I stood before the mirror and studied my reflection. The woman they'd called obsolete. The one who would show up with dates, amounts, and calm fire. In the stillness, I whispered my mantra. At my age, I don't shout. I document. I placed the folder labeled Ledger into my tote, along with a flash drive and my grandmother's rosary. "Tomorrow," I said to my reflection, "we stop pretending. Who laughs first when the siren turns the corner?" Thursday morning cracked open with a blue sky that looked too clean for what was coming. I dressed in my cream linen suit, pressed sharp, and tucked the cherry red folio under my arm. Inside, every receipt, timestamp, and copy of the forged notarization. Justice had a scent, paper and ink warmed by resolve. The night before, I had sat at my laptop, watching a tutorial titled Viscosity and Polymer Safety. Industrial glue, brand grade 202, same texture and tube design as Ultraglide. Non-toxic, clear, identical weight. A substitution clean enough to fool anyone not expecting consequence. I tested a drop on parchment and smiled when it said in seconds. Justice, but calculated. At 8:55 a.m., Harold appeared in the kitchen, eyes shadowed, tie crooked. "Lorraine," he said softly, "we need to be civilized about this." "Civilization ends where forgery begins," I replied. He reached for his coffee but stopped when I slid the folder across the counter. "Read it." He flipped the pages, face whitening with each proof. The $85,000 transfer, the fake notary stamp, the photo of him and Sienna, time-stamped Aug 18. "You had me followed?" he asked. I had myself protected. "This is extortion." "No," I said. "This is accounting." He slammed the folder shut. "You'll destroy our family." "Our family?" I said, stepping closer. "You already did when you signed my name." He tried to grab my wrist, but I was faster. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the record icon. "Say that again, Harold. About the document." He froze. "You wouldn't—" "At my age, I don't threaten. I archive." He stepped back, shaking his head. "You think you've won because of one messy night and some gossip?" I smiled. "I think I've only begun." At 9:12, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the wind chime shattered. I waited until his car turned onto Peachtree Street, then dialed Mrs. Whitaker. "Porch ready?" I asked. "Baby," she said, voice gleeful. "I charge my phone and my soul." What clause did he forget I wrote myself? By 9:30 a.m., the notary office hummed with quiet bureaucracy, the sound of pens against destiny. Harold sat at the glass table beside Sienna, her wrist bandaged from the glue incident. Darius stood near the door, uniform crisp, face unreadable. I walked in carrying a pastry box tied with gold string. "Morning," I said. "Peach tarts, for closure." Sienna's smile twitched. "Lorraine?" "Mrs. Brooks," I corrected. As I crossed the room, Harold's eyes darted to my bag. For a moment, his gaze lingered, suspicion flickering like a match. "What's in there?" he asked. "Receipts," I said lightly. "And sugar." His doubt passed, but for an instant I saw him wonder if I was still steps ahead. That small tremor in his confidence was my first win of the day. The notary, a gray-haired woman with half-moon glasses, adjusted her ledger. "We're here to finalize the franchise transfer?" "Almost," I said. I placed the folio on the table and opened it slowly, like scripture. Before we sign, let's review some details. Harold's jaw tightened. This isn't the place. It's the only place, I said, sliding out the forged deed. This is your document, correct? The notary frowned. That's my stamp. But I never witnessed this. Gasps. Darius stepped forward. Dad? Sienna's hand trembled. This isn't what you think. Really, I said, pulling out a small remote. On the notary's projector screen, the balcony footage flickered. Harold and Sienna laughing, plotting. Push the papers through, she said on video. The room went dead silent. Then I heard the faint hum of Mrs. Whitaker's phone outside the glass wall, recording as promised. Sienna bolted to her feet. You set us up. No, I said, closing the folio. You glued yourselves. Darius stepped between us. Dad, did you forge Mom's name? Harold didn't answer. The notary reached for the intercom. I'm calling the bank, she said, and my supervisor. As murmurs rippled through the lobby, I looked at my son and said quietly, Now you see the fire I warned you about. Outside, a siren passed. Faint, distant, familiar. Will Darius look at me or at them? The afternoon sun cut sharp through the bakery windows as I waited for Ms. Rhodes to arrive. News of the scandal had reached the Atlanta Ledger by lunchtime. Their headline, Local Business, Heir Under Investigation for Forged Documents. Beneath it, a photo of Harold being escorted from Peachtree Notary. Justice had a photographer today. At 1:42 p.m., Ms. Rhodes entered with measured calm. You did the hard part, she said, flipping through the folio. Now we formalize consequences. She filed for divorce, citing fraud, breach of trust, and emotional cruelty. By 3:10, Fulton County had issued a preliminary injunction. When Harold finally called, his voice was brittle. They froze my accounts. My investors pulled out. Maybe you should bake, I said. It teaches patience. That night, word spread that Sienna had resigned from the Chamber of Commerce and her boutique closed for renovation. Mrs. Whitaker came by with her phone, replaying the viral clip. Harold shouting in disbelief as officers led him to his car. Baby, she cackled, you trended. At 9:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Attempted withdrawal $12,000. Declined, account frozen. I smiled into the dark. Somewhere, a habit met a boundary. And when the storm quieted, I stood in my bakery kneading dough, the mixer humming like prayer. Above the rhythm, I whispered, I wasn't the loudest. I had dates and amounts. Who just served Harold with a criminal fraud inquiry? Friday, August 29th, began with a knock that sounded like punctuation. A process server stood on my stoop holding a brown envelope. For Harold Brooks, he said, criminal fraud inquiry from Fulton County, plus civil injunction. I signed with careful loops and texted Darius, delivered 8:06 a.m. At 9:30, Ms. Rhodes called. Judge signed the temporary injunction. You have sole operational control of 3 sisters pending hearing. Change locks, notify vendors, and post the notice. By noon, I had done it all. New locks, new rules, new peace. Mrs. Whitaker came in wearing her Sunday hat and sunglasses. Child, I heard Harold's renting a room by the airport, she said. Only thing sweet, there's vending machine honey buns. I laughed until I cried. Then may his coffee stay bitter. Together, we taped the injunction in the bakery window. You're making history, sugar, she said, stepping back to take a photo. Proof women our age don't retire. We rise. At 4:17 p.m., an email arrived from Sienna. Cease and desist for defamation. Ms. Rhodes replied instantly. Please see attached exhibits AG. We welcome discovery. That night, the golden light flooded my display case as I introduced a new sign. Peach Justice Tart, $6.50. Customers applauded the name. Baby, Mrs. Whitaker said, wiping tears. You baked karma with crust. Before closing, I walked to the wall where our first dollar bill hung in a frame. I straightened it and added a brass plaque beneath. I learned to choose myself without apology. In the quiet that follows a storm, I locked the door, slipped the new brass key into my pocket, and whispered to the ovens, We rise on purpose. What recipe do I retire forever? Labor Day morning smelled of cinnamon and rain. The neighborhood still buzzed with the story, how Station 14 had answered a call that became a reckoning. I kept my bakery closed until noon, giving the ovens a Sabbath. Then I unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open. The first customer was a little girl with braids and bright sneakers. She pointed at the new pastry case. "What's a peach justice tart?" she asked. "It's what happens," I said, "when sweetness remembers the truth." Her grandmother laughed softly. "You're Lorraine Brooks, aren't you? My daughter told me you taught her how to make pie crust back in '02. She pressed my hand across the counter. "We watched that video, baby. You didn't lose your dignity. You baked it into armor." By 3 o'clock, the church bell across Hosea rang for the gala setup. Pastor Miller called, "Lorraine, you still want the microphone?" "I'll be there," I said. At 6, the crowd filled the church basement, neighbors, patrons, even 2 reporters from the Ledger. I carried a tray of peach justice tarts and took the stage. "Good evening," I began. "They called me obsolete once. I call it seasoned. I don't shout. I document. And when you keep receipts, you don't have to raise your voice to be heard." Applause broke like thunder. Mrs. Whitaker whistled from the back, recording every second. When the lights dimmed, Darius joined me on stage, crisp uniform, steady eyes. He handed me an envelope. "Divorce finalized," he whispered. He signed everything. I exhaled, steady as a hymn. Then justice is served. Afterward, we walked home under string lights and cicadas. Passing the bakery window, I saw our reflection, 2 Brookses still standing. Inside, I placed my grandmother's whisk, the one pinned to my collar that day, into the display case beside the plaque. A note beneath read, "Legacy isn't what survives us. It's what we finally stop surviving." I turned the lock, let the key rest warm in my palm, and whispered to the darkened kitchen, "I kept my name." And when the doorbell chimed once more, it was Darius holding a paper bag. "Dinner," he said, smiling. "You fed enough people for one lifetime, Mom." I smiled back. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.